how to handle this, but I am really pleased that we have such a good representative population of old timers here. When we talked about it, Bob, we talked about we have got to get a bunch of old timers together to talk about how things were in agriculture in the valley. And your name came up right away with a 100-year plus farm that you're on, and sugar beets with you, and Bailey's, and dairy with Coles, and Gary Leaf was going to come about sheep, but he's on his way to Billings right now, and he said no matter what Sunday during the summer, he's on his way to Billings on Sunday for the sheep sale. But anyway, we had sheep in the valley, and beets in the valley, and potatoes and dairies, and orchards and apples, and a variety of crops that basically it seems like people would say, really? What? And we need to document some of this, and so we took advantage of the picnic idea of getting people together. Michael McKay here that gave us the invocation is doing a supervised agriculture education project with his FFA and in technology, and he can explain more about what his SAE is, but he will document and edit and put together something that we should all enjoy, that brings some of this history to documentation, because we all wanted our parents to do it, and our aunts and uncles and grandparents, and I don't know how successful we were. So we'll try it again. Teresa Manzella and Howard Lyons are prepared to kind of tell you what the end result will be used for, but it's an important goal, and something that the Wright Farm and Ranch Board has been simmering on for several months, and it involves land use policy. And anyway, Michael will probably, well, I'll pass around a piece of paper later too, so we can get addresses on here, so that if he needs to come back to you and visit with you on a one-to-one, he can arrange to do that. And so who goes first? Teresa, and then we'll have Michael later.
Okay.
You said one-to-one, not email, not
Let me see.
What? Exactly. So I'm going to try to stand down here at this end, because when I first moved to town, I actually hadn't even moved to town. In '91, I came on a working vacation, and I was blessed to light on Steve and Janie Boat's ranch up the Eastport. And that was what caused me to fall in love with Montana and make it my home a year later. The purpose of this, the genesis of this, started with the idea of trying to create a land use plan that will give our local governments, our local county commissioners, a stronger seat at the table with any federal agencies that they have to interface with. And as I've learned, you know, because I mean, in 1950, we had 224,000 cattle grazing in the Bitterroot Valley. Excuse me. Yeah, 1950. And by 1991, that number had dropped to 8,000. So that's a 95% reduction in cattle production in our Bitterroot Valley. And I'm like, why? You know, what caused those numbers to drop so dramatically? And that is why I would like to ask for your knowledge and your experiences and your memories and recollection to contribute to, what were the factors that went into that number dropping so dramatically over a 40-year period. Now we're looking at importing beef because in America we no longer produce enough beef to feed our country. So those are factors that I would just like to have a better understanding of. Now the number one thing is to have fun with this today. Absolutely have fun and share memories. And if there's any specific questions for you, I would have would be, what was your absolute best year in business, and what were the factors that contributed to that success, and then what was your worst year in business, and what were the factors that contributed to that. And anything else you'd like to share, any kind of historical memories that you feel that you would like to share, we would love to have them, because NEPA, which is the National Environmental Policy Act, specifically states that the federal agencies must respect and consider our history, customs, and cultures. And that's you. That's where you come in. You know the history and customs and cultures because you lived it. And it's I guess my opinion that our history, customs, and cultures are not getting enough respect. So this will be used for that purpose, to try to build a land use plan that recognizes our history, customs, and cultures. And how did things look when there was 225,000 cows in Bitterroot Valley? And I would like to start us off, if you would humor me, with a poem that I wrote about Marvin Whetstone. How many people knew Marvin Whetstone? He was a very, very dear friend to me. I was absolutely blessed to settle in Sula and have he and Betty and their whole family take me under their wing and show me what it meant to be a Montanan. And he's the only person who ever inspired me to write a poem. I'm not really much of a poet, but I'm going to give it a shot for him. I wrote this at the end of his life, and that was in '96. He was strong, like the Douglas fir that he fell, and he could scamper up a mountain like a goat. But of his strength and his knowledge, you would never hear him gloat. He'd share his knowledge with you if you asked him. Years of experience and things of the past. Beaver slides, elk traps, daring rescues and such. Of these things, this man knew much. The stories he would tell would amaze me as I sat wide-eyed and listened to him talk. Far more than a rancher or cowboy, this man had been where only the bighorn walk. He was steady and sure, like the horses he rode, and fair like a grandfather clock. In the 7 years I was privileged to know him, not one man's name did he knock. He was quiet a lot of the time, not real big on needless chatter, but when he spoke, you'd better be listening, because you could bet it was about something that mattered. He was a friend to me like no other, and a stranger was just someone he hadn't met yet. And how many hunters had utilized his land, and I bet they'll never forget. He was as patient as molasses in January. Never once did I see him flustered or mussed. He had logs to saw and cows to calve. He couldn't take time for a fuss. He was methodical. Everything had a system. God, I wish I had half of his wisdom. When the grazing fees went up and the allotments went down, it was sure enough to make a lot of men frown. But Marvin just gave me a glance and a grin, and he said, we'll just tighten our belts if it gets a little thin. And one of these days, I'll tell him what I think, as he looked at me with a reassuring wing. And sure enough, when their book learning failed them, and they needed a straight answer, it was Marvin they came to settle the matter. He was the salt of the earth, tried, true, and tested. Even in illness, he couldn't be bested. This merciless disease tried to steal his dignity, but this was a man with far greater integrity. And that's the way I remember Marvin Whetstone. And I wish he was here, because he sure had a lot of history that he knew and could share. So, we'd like to record it if you're comfortable. How'd I do, Howard? Did I hit on the things that you want to share some more?
Thing crossed off.
You what? You got?
I told her that she could talk first, and then I crossed things off my list, and then I don't have a thing to talk about when you're done.
Okay. So I don't really, Michael, do you wanna have an idea how we're gonna do this? The idea was to just kind of have some round table discussions and just to get you to share comfortably, if you're willing.
Can I talk before?
Yeah.
Before we start?
Sure, please.
Okay. This land use policy that Teresa was talking about, I got interested in this in '93. I had moved here in '65, and like Teresa, I lived up in Darby first, kind of, but come down this way later. And but it was the Two Goods and the Whetstones that I had met first. And every year, the cattle that they got to turn out on the forest dwindled. They kept getting smaller and smaller and smaller. The trees kept spreading out and covering the grass, so there just wasn't enough. There wasn't much there to eat anymore, and they just got progressively thicker. And then we had 30, 40 years of drought on top of the whole thing, and now we got trees dying, falling down, and we got fires and smoke. And these things have all added up, and we've been wondering, since the late 80s, 90s, what can be done about this? And the Forest Service, they were put in charge of this to take care of or make the forest more productive. And the only thing that's happened is they've got less productive. And the revenue that comes off the public lands is 25% of that is supposed to cover or is supposed to go towards roads and schools. Well, that hasn't been happening now for quite a few years, decades maybe, even since it in anything. So in '93, there was a conference up at Kalispell put on by Fred Kelly Grant, and that's when we got to know him the first time. Terry Nelson, myself, and well, there was a half a dozen or 10 of us that went up to that, and I think it was in Catron County, just out of Boise. This Fred Kelly Grant had put together some ideas. I don't know if he got them from somebody else or what, but he told us about it. And then there was Karen Bud Bailiff out of Wyoming. She was a student of Fred Kelly Grant. And they finally got the NEPA that Teresa was talking about, National Environmental Policy Act. And that was written to take care of the public lands so that it would be productive. Now, the public lands in western U.S. right now is all in the red. It costs more to maintain public lands than it does for it is more than what the revenue comes off it. The Montana state lands, it's in the green. and it always has been. It operates at a profit. It's not a lot, but it's some. So it takes care of the employees anyway. And now the NEPA, it was written, or let's see, it's been rewritten, or I guess I should say interpreted by the government agencies that work under that NEPA. And so they have changed it now to where it doesn't operate at a profit. Now the other governors all across the U.S. are sick and tired of paying for these western states. And they want something done. They want this land given back to the states. They don't want to be a part of it anymore. So we hear on the radio or on TV all the time that our representatives from here are wanting to take back the public lands. Well, they want them on there. They'll take it back, but it'll be run like the state lands are. Now, I don't know if we can handle all this or not, because Ravalli County is 73% public lands. So how does something like this, how do you swallow something like this and keep on going? It's already a fire trap, so something's got to be done about that. So this is part of what Teresa was talking about, is land policy. There's got to be some way to swallow this elephant. And the only way you can do it is one bite at a time. But it's, somebody's got to start someplace, or what's going to happen, you know. I mean, it's just anybody's imagination what is eventually going to happen with all this. It'll all be burned out and we'll get lost. But, and at the time when I got started on this, there was an engineer by the name of Joe Gray. I don't even know if Joe's alive anymore, but we did come up with a county plan. We did take it into the county commissioners, and they just each took a sheet of, a copy of that and threw it behind them and lit up on top of it. And here's what we think of your county plan, and forget it. They wanted to be elected again, you know, so that's as far as that went. But since that happened, there's been other people that are worried. Beaverhead County was one. They do now have a county land use plan. I don't know how many others in the state. Is that the only one?
No, I think there's 6 or 7 counties that,
Yeah.
and Ravalli County has what they call a natural resource plan, but I believe, if I remember right, it's 14 pages long, and according to Karen Bud Fallon, who we hired to come up to teach us how to create a land use plan, she said it was just lacking in a lot of detail. We need a lot more detail, specifics as far as, you know, what, like an animal unit, what did it contribute to the valley? How much was that worth, and how many, what did it contribute to the valley?
I'm just thinking about, when my husband and I were first married, we got 28 cents for the taxes. Once in there somewhere we got a 98 cents for them, and then most of the time it was 50-something cents. How in the heck do you know what they're worth? I mean, nowadays it's more than that, thank heavens, but how would you make a long-term plan for knowing what something that is so up and down is gonna be worth? I mean, how do you do that?
Well, do you have records? Do you have any old records available?
Probably.
Yeah, I think, you know, we would start by laying that out and watching the volatility in the markets, and then adding cost of living increases and inflationary increases, and be able to project, you know, what that did for our tax base and for our economy in the valley, and then carry that forward to today. You know, in today's market, what's an animal unit worth? You know, if we had 225 thousand animal units in the Bitterroot Valley, what would that do for our economy? You know, what would that be contributing to our economy? Would it be bad? You think it'd be worse?
A lot better than all these houses.
I just say it's pretty hard for them to eat on carpet and linoleum right
Yeah.
That was good, Brian.
There's too many trees per acre.